If you're passionate about property investing or thinking about buying your first investment property, well, the Property Success Podcast is for you. It's full of tips, tricks, strategies and special guests and personal development secrets to help you have a better lifestyle, more freedom and more choice.
Okay, good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are in the world, and welcome to the Property Success Podcast. I've got none other than Mr. Raymond Crooks from Thompson Crooks Solicitor. And I've been running Property Success Podcast, Raymond, now for, every now and again I have a guest on. And I'm thinking to myself, we've been running it for about 3 years and I've never had you on Property Success Podcast. And I'm thinking, why did I not think of asking you before? Because anybody that knows you knows that you've got a story or two when it comes to properties and property investing and stuff like that. And I'm sure we'll hear a wee bit a few of those stories, and some of them are funny and some of them are a wee bit serious, but I'm sure we'll hear something about them here quite shortly. So Raymond, for those of you who don't know you, and people in the property world in Northern Ireland, I'm sure that's not a lot of people, but for anybody that's maybe not from Northern Ireland that's listening in, just give us a wee quick synopsis of who you are and what you do.
No bother. I am the director of Thompson Crooks Solicitors in Belfast. We have 2 offices based on the Shankill Road and also on the Lisburn Road. I've been specialising and working on property since 1996, which is quite scary. Bought my first investment in 1998 and 2001, and excuse me, just kept going. The firm itself does everything really. With 8 solicitors now and a trainee, so we're no longer a small firm. We used to be a small firm. We're a decent sized firm for Northern Ireland now. Anything more than the average firm, I think it's just 3 solicitors.
Yeah.
Dealing with everything. I have been buying and selling houses personally and also for other people for years, involved with quite a bit of creative financing during the day and instalment contracts and lease options and all sorts of disasters. Whenever the world fell to pieces from 2007 and 8. So it's been an entertaining ride, but I'm, say 28 years this year qualified. So it's been a good journey.
And you said, and that's how I came across you, Raymond. Somebody recommended you that there was you mentioned the term there, creative finance. And we used to call them lease options, but then I realized that lease options is only one wee part of it. There's much more to the whole lease option strategy that people think. And I remember someone saying to me, I was looking for other solicitors because I knew a solicitor at the time that did it, and somebody mentioned your name and said you're the man to go to, and that's been it. I must have rang you up, spoke to you, whatever, and there's been no turning back. When you think back about the lease option creative finance, did it happen as a result of the property crash in 2008, or was it starting to come in before that? What's your thought?
I think the crash, Chris, because if you remember going back to the late 90s, there was no such thing as buy-to-let mortgages.
Yeah.
It was basically a commercial loan that you got from the local bank, and they were quite happy to give you a few quid. And I think I've told you before, my first loan was with my mate who happened to be working in Israel at the time, and he was earning a fortune. So he was saying, like, Mum, will buy a few houses and do them up or whatever. And I was like, I no bother. And we got a 12% loan from the Ulster Bank, paying 12% on it, and that was just as what it was. And I think one of the houses we bought was maybe 11 grand and sold it within 5 months for, 27 and a half, and thought we were brilliant.
12%, and 12%. Did that feel normal back in them days, or
because there was no such thing, So, and then of course you get into the naughties and the wheels fell off the whole thing, and there was buy-to-lets and self-certification, and I had a hunting fund with Ulster Bank for £3 million to just go and buy whatever I want. But
yeah.
in relation to the lease options and things, when that all started to fall apart in 2007 and 8, there was a guy come over actually from Cambridge, and he had been introduced to me through Ray Estates and the Shankill, because Willie Ray had went and opened, and he still is, quite a big estate agencies in the northeast.
Yeah.
And he was doing quite a bit up there. And it was people who were basically squealing and on their knees financially, and they were able to then take these options and not physically buy it. but you're able to take possession and take ownership without actually physically owning it.
Yeah, I suppose it was taking away the problem that people had, which was big mortgages, lack of money, and someone was, what would you call it, sort of like you end up babysitting the mortgage.
Yeah, accidental landlords, really, a lot of them were too. People who had houses that you couldn't sell. I mean,
Yeah.
I was even talking to a guy last night. I had a house there. We were forced out of our home by the road service in 2008 and had to buy a house. Paid 305 grand for it, and it's probably just now worth what we paid for it.
Is this the one that you lived in before you moved to your existing house?
Yeah. So the house that we were in, thankfully, we were able to keep it at the time. But I mean, you think about that, like, so the house in 2008 dropped in value. I think it would have been dropped probably over 100 grand, and it's only now probably back up to what we actually paid for it
Yeah.
in
And
2025.
you said there that they took a bit, or they made you sell your house, or what do they do?
Well, it was a
compulsory
road widening
purchase order?
scheme, Chris, just at Georgetown University there.
Yeah.
So I lived in between Carrick and just past Belfast High School. They done that whole road widening scheme.
Yeah.
So our house, where my TV used to sit, is now where the road is.
Right.
And the living room is no longer there.
Is that what do they call that? Is it a compulsory purchase order? Is that?
Yeah, that's what it is. It's a vesting order. They just come and vest it. So if they're doing like any of that A5 road or anything, they just arrive at your door and say, right, we're taking your house.
And how long do they give you to get out, or what's?
Well, ours lasted forever because there was a bit of an inquiry and there was a public debate and all this nonsense, and it usually does with these things. It takes years and years. I mean, apparently the very first people were paid off in the 70s for that road scheme,
Right.
and then it delayed and delayed and delayed, and then eventually they moved it and they changed it. They went out, they went country bound as such, and then come back onto the road scheme where we were, and all the houses along that road were then just vested.
Yeah.
And I think it cost them 54 million or something.
Jeez. And that's the money that people don't realize, that when it goes into building a road, you wonder why it costs so much. It's actually buying land and buying houses.
Exactly. If it's not greenfield.
Yeah. And do they give you market value for it, or?
Give me market value and you get 10% on top of it, and you get your legals and all sorts of things. So I mean, it worked out quite well for us, just by chance. But it was to say, we then had to go and buy another house. In fact, I actually said to Lindsay, what we'll do is rent, and she was like, not a chance in hell.
Yeah.
I knew the market was falling at that stage. As I say, that was 2000 in November 2008, October, November, because our youngest was actually, we moved 4 weeks before she was born.
Yeah.
And it was just a question of go and get out at the time, but as I say, but that house is only now back to what we paid for.
Yeah. I suppose it's trying to sort of time the market, isn't it? Knowing whether it's worth going and renting for a year to see if prices drop. But then I suppose prices drop for 3 or 4 years before there was a wee bit of stability. I think it was like 2013 before the prices stopped falling. So
it was madness.
Yeah, you'd have been throwing away a lot of rent. But so we talked about challenges there, Raymond. You've had a number of challenges in the property world over the years.
Yeah, with houses.
Yeah.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, your famous one, I think you like, is the house that was stolen.
The house that was stolen, yeah, that's the one I'm thinking of.
The brick bandits in North Belfast. A wee row, 10 2-bed, small, 2 up, 2 downs, and they had a bonfire site at the back of it, just at Lanark Way there. And basically, the kids tortured there was about 7 houses, I think, that had tenants in them, and the owners basically sold up and moved. There was a guy actually at the time was buying quite a lot of houses in that area, a boy called Can. And Can had done a deal with the 2 or 3 people who owned the houses to basically buy them. He was wanted to own their whole row. But what happened was then they tortured the tenants left, and the guys basically took the houses apart from the back. And I arrived at the front door to wonder why there was daylight shining in through the glass door, because there was no bloody windows in the hall. And opened the front door to see the back of the house missing. And they had done it perfectly. They had actually stripped. So the back wall, the back return, the back kitchen, just basically boarded it up, or took them all out brick by brick and sold them for £100 apparently at the pallet.
Yeah,
Well,
unbelievable.
I know you tell that to people, look at as if you'd get two heads, but it
Yeah,
actually it did happen. And then what happened was, whenever they done the damage, then we had the police and everything involved, and then the next night the whole row was burnt to the ground. And then the guys who were taking the bricks actually came and took all the bricks anyway. So they came after the fire was put out and took them all away on pallets. Madness.
unbelievable. You couldn't write the story, and
No,
I'm sure that's not the biggest challenge you had. Like a lot of us, you'd have bought a lot of property before the crash and ended up seeing the values plummet. Did you get?
very much so. And I mean, I still have stuff that's in negative equity, and I would have bought it years ago. I bought stupidly 6 houses in July 2007 for 125 odd grand each, I think, or 127 each. Because I was getting a deal, and they were probably about 25 grand under market value at the time, and they're
Yeah.
probably still not worth the money that I paid for them.
Yeah, and
You know,
even what did you say there? 2007,
yeah,
18 years later, and they've not got back to that 125,000 that you paid for them. And as you said, they were probably valued at 150 as well at the time.
yeah. I mean, we were buying and selling. The worst I think I ever seen was one of the sort of two up, two downs just off Duvarn up at the top of the Woodvale Road, and there was a guy bought two of them for 175 grand each.
Unbelievable.
I think in 10 years they'll still not be worth 175 grand. You know, and we're buying and selling houses, you know, the Highfield Estate, Shangle Estate, £150,000, and people had bought them for £800 and £900 at the late 90s because they were council houses.
Yeah, bought them off the housing executive or whatever.
Bought them off, literally for hundreds of pounds.
Yeah,
I think the best one I seen was they'd bought it for 800 and sold it for like 160 or 70.
yeah,
You know, grand, obviously.
yeah. That's a pension pot right there for someone.
You know what I mean?
And tell me this, Raymond, why did you get into property? Like, obviously, having a solicitor's practice,
Yeah.
it's a career, it's a good career. Like, what attracted you to property?
Probably my mum as much as anything. She always dragged us around houses when we were younger.
Yeah,
And she'd always like the thoughts of doing stuff up and moving it on. And that's what I got involved in. And as I say, my chum, who was the airline fitter, he worked in shorts and then left shorts, and he's still actually doing it. He travels the world fixing airplanes. So he was earning proper serious money when we were only in our 20s. And he was like, what are we going to do with this? And I was like, well, sure, we'll go together. And because he was away all the time, it was perfect fit. So I looked after them and managed them and obviously done the legals. And he put the deposits in for some of them. And then and it was easy, Chris. I mean, it was madness.
yeah,
You know, you literally were. And of course, the numbers were completely different. You know, we bought a house in the village for about 29 grand, I think it was, and sold it, you know, within 6 months for 45.
yeah.
Kitchen, bathroom, and back then a kitchen and a bathroom. I mean, me and him got drunk one weekend and painted it. You know, there wasn't a hole in the house with a carry out and a couple of paintbrushes.
Yeah.
Um,
I remember just around the same time, I think it was September, it was September 2006, but it took until nearly September 2007 for there was only 40 years left on the leasehold. So it was a terraced house, but it was leasehold. And the people that owned it, they had to buy out the freehold from the lord that owned that particular ground that it was sitting on. But the people, his descendants, if you like, were scattered in different parts of the world. So it took them 11 months. So in August 2007, then we finally got the keys, bought the property. I'd paid 120 grand for it. I stuck it on the market, and within a week I had an offer of 185,000, and I hadn't even done anything to it. No, it turned out then that the guy didn't go ahead and buy it because his business went under, because he was affected by the crash at the time. But yeah, like 65 grand in the space of a week. Now it took a year to go up in value, but if I had got money for it, I was making 65 quid, and I hardly even went in through the front door. It was chaos, but yeah.
we moved 5 times in 7 years as well. So me and Lindsay first got married, or not even got married, whenever we first lived with each other. I'm going away from I was 16. But in
Yeah.
1998, we bought our first house. Bought it for 34 grand. New bathroom, and renovated top to bottom. But I'd done all the tiling, done all the painting, done all the bits and pieces with my dad. Remortgaged it a year later and went and bought another house and done the exact same thing. We didn't even live in that house properly. We lived in the back room while the kitchen and bathroom and everything else was done. And that was the year we got married. And within a year, sold it and moved on and done the exact same thing 5 times. And just then, whenever we got what we referred to as the big house in the Shore Road, it took us 5 or 6 months to do the work on it. And we moved then from our nice 4-bed detached house in Carrick into a 2-bed, 2 up, 2 down dump, and lived in it for 6 months while we were renovating the other house.
And
You know,
were you practicing as a solicitor at the time, or?
was, yeah.
Yeah. Where
So,
did you find time?
well, here,
Things that
I
you stuck in as
remember,
well?
yeah, I remember sitting at night time. One time we had hired Sanders for the weekend, and I was sitting at 2:30 in the morning on my bum shuffling across this bedroom that was 24 feet long, punching in nails on the old wooden floor. It was all the like 6-inch wide floorboards, and every nail had to be punched down, and it took me days to do that, because if you didn't, your sanding belt would break when it hit because of the old style nails with a big massive head on it.
Yeah.
And that's the sort of thing I used to do, and we used to tile to all hours of the morning, and just, you think back, actually it was mad what we used to do, but thankfully it paid off, a lot of it obviously financially.
And I think you have to go through some of that stuff to understand that it's best to pay somebody else to do it. I mean, I mean, even in my own house, I remember putting skirting and architrave on and thinking I'd done a good job, and then when I seen a proper joiner do it, I thought I've just made a complete pig's lick
Yes.
of that. It's like, get that ripped off and get somebody else in. And the same with tiling. I did a bit of tiling in the kitchen when we first moved into this house, and I thought I was really chuffed with myself for doing it. And then I thought, sort of looked at it, and I thought I can just see cracks in tiles and grout.
No, I think I'm good at it, Chris.
You think you're
I,
good
I,
at it?
I think I'm good at it because I've done it for I don't know how many houses, but I have my own, all the gear and all the stuff but that's funny, but I wouldn't touch it now, and it's not even laziness, it's just as you say, get someone else to do it.
Yeah. Just jumping back, Raymond, from the lease options, did you do any of the lease options yourself? I know you were doing lots of them and have been doing lots of them over the years.
No, I never really get into it, but because was able to get quite a bit of finance myself, I didn't need to as such.
Yeah.
By that stage, by the time the lease options and thing came out, I already had like a portfolio of 40 houses.
Yeah.
So 40 was more than enough, and that was just,
It was plenty.
that was just good.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's true, and I suppose people are sort of scared of missing out. Is there any particular lease option where you thought, oh, I wish I was doing this with myself?
Oh, there's quite a few of them. Yeah, there's some of them. Our good friend Michael Smith
Yeah.
would have been very good at the deals, and he can sell snow to the Eskimos. And some of the stuff Michael done over the years, was very good. But again, he's the guy who goes out and makes it happen. He's very good in the website and very good. He chases it.
And he would travel the length and breadth of the country too for doing his flips. I've met him in a house up in Limavady one time a few years ago, and he's had stuff down around the Mourns, and I wouldn't be surprised he's been in Enniskillen as well. He's just here, there, and everywhere.
He had the what do they call it, ugly marketing or dirty marketing or something. He had the big bright yellow trotter van with we buy homes on the side of it, and his mobile number written as if somebody had done it in a crayon.
And I remember his sidekick Mark. Mark had a wee what do they call it, a V board. It was a wee trailer with the board sort of sitting on it. I mean, I've driven past it a few times in the most weirdest of places, and then a couple of days later it's gone. And he used to tell me about how the best place it was, he would always be told to move it. The council would come ring him up. They were trying to speak to him about a house, and then say, right, kiddo, get this bloody trailer moved. And he used to have it padlocked to fences and stuff like that. But brilliant piece of marketing. And is it ugly marketing they called it?
Something like that, Chris, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, as you say, the yellow and black signs, and if it looks, the phone number looks as if it's been scribbled on it by a kid, and
Yep.
and sometimes it would have had a woman's name on it because people would always feel more. But women would ring women, and men would obviously ring women too.
Yeah.
But I think it was Michael said to me, always put a woman's name down on it because people will pick up the phone and ring a woman to talk about a house before they'd ring a man. But no, I did one a few years ago. I think it was around the time that we came to you. I got a house for 35 grand. Now it was falling apart, but it's now probably worth about 170, 180,000. And I got somebody else to fund it, and I got somebody else to fund the refurb. And then once the whole thing was done and we turned it into a 5-bed HMO, we got a mortgage on it for 82,000. I ended up we paid back the guy that put the money in to buy it and put the money in to do the refurb, and we had 20 grand left over. So we ended up paying all the finance back and having 10 grand cash back each, which was, I just couldn't believe my luck. I thought, you're doing a deal, you're actually taking control of a house, you're not actually owning it, and then getting in and doing all the work. Somebody else is paying for that, and at the back end of it, then I get rid of all that finance, put a mortgage in place that's only 300 quid a month, and it's
That
now
works.
bringing in about £1,800 a month as an HMO. But yeah, had a couple
I
of
had a good, I had a good client. The guy unfortunately passed away there a couple of years ago. Derek McCandless. Did you ever
Oh
come
yes,
across
Derek.
him?
Yeah, Derek used to come to the property meets.
Yeah. Well, he had real some good deals, and he was also good at it. He would have been out and about in around the yards and Bangor area and things. And he
Yeah,
got
I remember
like,
looking at he sent me a spreadsheet or something one time about how he was going to do a deal, and like how he even put it together, I do not know. But yeah, you're right. He had a way of, like, what do they call it, splicing and dicing and stuff like that. Take this bit off and do this with that bit and do this with that bit and get a bit of finance and that and do a JV in this. And it was like my head was spinning even looking at the deal. I had no idea how he came up with them, but.
he had a good deal, and then he had Bangor who tried to renege on it after he had the house for like 12 years. And the son of the mother and father was involved in the paramilitaries apparently, and he had a whole pile of stuff. But they took it right through to the court and challenged it. And I was never so glad that they won their case, or Derek won his case, because it was my contract that I drafted that they were using.
Yeah.
You
Was it an option agreement or was it an
know,
installment?
it was an installment contract,
Right.
but the guy who was doing it basically got into the witness box and lied through the teeth and said that he was in the solicitors for 45 or 50 minutes and hadn't got any legal advice and hadn't done this and hadn't done that. And the judge was like, if you're in a solicitor's for 50 minutes, how the hell are you not getting any legal advice?
What
Don't
was he
tell me.
doing?
Yeah, what he's doing. And he says most solicitors would chase you after 5 minutes unless you're paying them.
Yeah.
They're not there to talk about the rugby or the golf. But he had a couple of smashing deals.
Yeah. No, Derek, good guy. I didn't realize he'd passed away.
He passed away, unfortunately, a couple of years ago there, Chris. Just
Yeah. I hadn't seen him for a while. I did hear he was ill, but I didn't know he'd passed away, which is
yeah.
a shame. He was a good guy. Um, I, in terms of nowadays, Raymond, as a solicitor, are you still buying property, or have you trying to get rid of the 40, or?
I'm trying to get rid of them, Chris. Now I still have. Funny, the last couple of years, I hadn't bought anything for a lifetime, and then we bought a bit of stuff there the last few years. Doing quite well. Now I have adult children
Yeah,
who all of a sudden can get a mortgage.
yeah,
So my two eldest are now the owners of houses, and their daddy has gobbled up their stamp duty allowance on a first time right.
oh yeah, yeah.
So no doubt, whenever it comes to them buying their own home, I'll have to stump up the cash for the stamp duty paying that I've just caused them.
And is one of them's training to become a solicitor, or is she?
Lara's just finishing her law degree now, so she starts in Thomson Crooks in September as an apprentice solicitor.
Yeah, property or conveyancing or?
Well, she'll be doing everything. She'll be doing her full apprenticeship, so she'll be getting her hands dirty in all the bits and pieces, Chris.
Yeah, and is that the way it generally works? I don't know. I just assume anybody that does property conveyancing, they sort of specialize in that particular area. Or
you get start off. I mean, what you actually do, it's a 2-year training contract, and it's a year at Queen's and a year in the office. And we'll be teaching them as much as we can about everything, So I'll be giving her the Eileen to go and do a bit of family work, and giving her the Catherine to go and do a bit of litigation. Maybe give her do a bit of she'll be doing a bit of probate and a bit of wills, and she'll be learning it all. And then with her father getting her ear bent about property, But she's been working for us for the last couple of years. Whenever she can, whenever I've had her into the office. So she has been working, but she'll be an actual proper apprentice in September, and then 2 years after that she's qualified.
Yeah. Good.
Sail off into the sunset.
Yeah. What was I going to say? So will she practice then as a conveyancing solicitor, do you think?
I don't know. It's up to herself. She might do that. I mean, we have at the moment, there's 5 of us doing property in Thomson Crooks.
Yeah.
There's myself, William, Cara, Shannon, and Sarah. And Cara's, even though she's not actually fully qualified yet, but she's been there with us 10 years. So she was my secretary full time, and then she had brains to burn. And I was like, "You're wasted." Going. So she done a law degree, or she done a master's, at night time. With Queen's, I think it was, and then that allowed her to apply to the institute to become a solicitor. And she got in right away. And she's going to be fully qualified in September as well. But she's as good as, if not better than some of the other ones, because she's been it longer.
Yeah, I'll cut that bit out then, just in case any of them watch this. But
more experienced.
Yeah, the more experience. That's it.
More experience. That's what I mean. Because she's doing. It'll be actually 11 years this September, I think.
She's been around a long time. Yeah.
Yeah. But she's good.
She came on the scene probably around the time when we started working together. That was probably 11 or 12 years ago.
Yeah.
Maybe slight. No, you had another girl there before that, the secretary.
Ashley.
Ashley, that's it. Yeah. Yeah. So that's probably 13 years ago.
It just shows you.
And Raymond, outside of property, and outside of legal stuff, you're a busy man. You've got your fingers in a lot of pies. Play a bit of well, I was going to say you play a bit of rugby. I know you're involved with Carrick Rugby Club.
I'm the president this year for my sins, just finished. It's just about the season finishes on Monday. Where we'll have our second Ravenhill final.
Yes.
Of the year, after not getting to it since 2003 and not winning anything since 1990 or 91. So we won the Junior Shield, and we're back up for the McCrae Cup final against Ballymoney next Monday.
And you won something there a few weeks back, because I remember.
Yeah, we won Ravenhill. We won the Junior Shield.
Yeah, so it must have been a proud moment, I would say.
It was brilliant. It was fantastic. It was a fantastic day out as well. And by chance, it was the week after our league had finished. And by chance, I had actually booked a hog roast for the rugby club, just to come and for the players to thank them for their efforts. Yeah. So the hog roast booked, and then we had the final, and the final was an early kickoff as well, which was fantastic. So 12 o'clock kickoff. So it meant we were all back at the club for about 3 o'clock.
Yeah.
And there wasn't much crack on the Sunday, I can tell you.
No, I wouldn't have said. And does it take up much of your time? Obviously, I'm chairman at Ballymena United Football Club, and it takes up as much time as you're prepared to give it. And
that's it. Sometimes. Yeah, I suppose it's not too bad. We have quite a good management structure and team, and I have a good support network with the whole thing. Guys around you, so all the conveners all doing their different jobs. And I suppose my biggest commitment is a Saturday, where every Saturday you're expected to go and follow the teams and go and do whatever, or if they're playing, even the girls play on a Sunday, go and try and watch them as well. But it's mostly following the firsts, because that's the pinnacle of the club, obviously. And then as president, you're going and having lunch or beers or whatever with the opposition before the game and then after the game.
Yeah. And what do you find easier, Raymond? Being president of a rugby club, being a solicitor, and running a team of 8 others or 7 other solicitors and secretaries and stuff, or being a property investor?
The property's hard. Well, the property's hard work because of the tax changes.
Yeah.
I've very successful property portfolio there for a long time, but the changes to the taxes is just brutal.
Yeah.
Since
So,
You know,
for people that are listening in, I think when me and you started investing in property, one, there was no extra stamp duty. So you only paid stamp duty if it was 125,000 or more. And a lot of the
mhm.
properties would have been buying, we wouldn't have been getting to that point until maybe 2007 anyway. So there was no extra stamp duty. There was no Section 24. So 40% taxpayers were paying the tax the way they normally would, whereas nowadays they're almost paying tax on turnover rather than profit. What
We
else?
are.
Oh, 10% wear and tear allowance gone. Um, Stamp duty gone up again from 3% to 5%. Uh,
The insurance through the roof
the insurance is through the roof.
because of the cost of trying to get stuff
Well,
repaired or what.
even with HMOs, there was no planning permission back in the day. It was just a license. There's other things that I've missed. All the certificates, like the electrical certs now and mains wired, or interlinked smoke and heat detectors. They just
Yeah,
seem to be coming down heavy on landlords. I mean, I know it's been said before. They see us as an easy touch. Do you?
we are. That's the problem. I mean, even the rates in Northern Ireland, why do we pay rates? Why is the
Yeah.
landlord responsible for the rates? It's nonsense.
Well, yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
they don't do it anywhere else in the UK.
Yeah, we're the only part of the UK, and even the Republic of Ireland too. Nobody pays council tax on behalf of someone else. It's the person in the house that's paying it, but we get hit with it. It's yeah. I think we're unfairly sort of penalised.
Yeah.
I mean, going back to something else you did, was it chairman of the?
I was chairman of Lanny for 4.5 years, from 13 or 14 to 17 or 18,
And
thereabouts.
did you,
Yeah.
and did you see there was a lot of changes obviously happening around that period of
That,
time?
yeah, that was whenever the landlord registration scheme was brought in, and
Oh,
also
the
the
tenancy deposit scheme.
tenancy deposit scheme. So that all happened then. And then whenever the HMO stuff started coming down the line, I was like, I don't have the time for this, because I knew it would have been brutal,
Hectic.
which it turned out to be.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed that as well, because it was good to see what was happening, and I loved going to the likes of Stormont and jousting with the politicians, and
Yeah.
you
And I
and
mean,
even like, the housing rights and things.
yeah, I mean, I think the thing is, and I've seen it myself in recent times because I've spoke to local MLAs and stuff, and went to them and sort of pulled them up about their attitude to HMOs. And obviously, Ballymena got an issue because of um, there's a lot of people from overseas coming to work to work in a bus factory, and I'm not. It's nothing to do with the people who own the bus factory, but they're bringing people in and housing them for a certain period of time, and then they have to go and find their own place to stay, which is great. And then there just aren't the HMOs in Ballymena, and someone locally was talking about it, but they were misquoted in that they were made to look as if they were against HMOs when they weren't, and because they'd taken a section of what they had said and sort of misquoted it, or
Polished it for
polished
their
it,
own use.
just like took off a bit that made put it into context. So when that bit was taken off, the bit that they quoted on its own seemed as if he was against HMOs, and he certainly wasn't. But yeah, I mean, I think nobody speaks up for landlords. We're seen
So
as wealthy capitalist bastards, if you'll excuse my French, that are making an absolute fortune. And I think nothing could be further from the truth. I don't know
yeah,
anybody with a buy-to-let portfolio is making an absolute fortune. It's
you
just
can't.
getting harder and harder and harder.
Yeah. Unless you've been lucky enough to have a big pot of money that you've got, and you've went and bought houses. But even then, if you're not paying it through a company, you're paying the tax on it. It's killing you.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and even then, when you're paying 19%, and if you're lucky enough to be making even more profit, you could be paying much more than 19%, up to 25% corporation tax, and then you need to get the money out of there. And that's another thing. Things like what do they call it? Dividends. That the amount of money you can take out tax-free dividends has dropped.
And the other thing as well, Chris, was got about a minute ago, was capital gains. But sure, look at the difference in capital gains tax.
Capital
Used to
gain.
used to be 13 grand each, and it's now down to 3, and it's going to nothing.
Yeah, and
You know,
it'll all be taxed as part of your normal income tax.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I think us poor landlords have been kicked in the whatsits over and over again over the last 10 years or so. It's
Yeah.
it's cruel.
They've just allowed it to do it, and it's a big thing for Sinn Féin, obviously, just because they're socialists. Forget
Yeah.
about it. They said it's nothing to do with the green or blue. They're a socialist party, and that's what they want, you know. And I mean, I went to a hustings before. Jeepers, how many elections have we had? I forget. It must have been, it was before COVID anyway, but I went to a hustings meeting up in North Belfast, and they had a couple of them people from not before profit and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Just, haven't a clue how the real world works.
Yeah.
Just take everything. It was nearly like Communist Party.
Yeah.
It felt as if they were going to throw up. And I was the only one there as a landlord, the only person that spoke up. And I nearly felt as if I was actually booed. I was actually booed because I was saying, well, what about the landlords? What about this? What about that? And one of them says, oh, you're a disgrace because you have more than one house. And I'm like, well, the government hasn't been building houses the last 25 years.
No, exactly. And what the private rented sector in Northern Ireland, Raymond's about 24-25%.
Yeah, it's the private rented sector is the biggest supplier of rental property in the whole of Northern Ireland, above anybody else. I mean, I didn't actually realise that until, probably years ago now. But whenever I first started doing that, and somebody said to me, like, the private rented sector is bigger than the housing executive, I was like, wise up. Never, but as you say, I think it was about 25-26%, far more than the other.
Private landlords have more houses to rent than any other group, any other housing association, or
all of them put together, Chris.
Unbelievable,
isn't it? So the government wasn't building, and not only that, this is another thing that they've done a poll in 18 or 19 or just I think it was 18 maybe with the housing rates, and they've done a poll, and it was like an 88% success for people who were basically private renters. Are you happy? And they got an 88% pass rate, and I quoted that whenever I was Instalment a couple of times, and they were like, "Oh, that was flawed, and that was this, and that was that." I was like, "No, it wasn't."
Well, I guarantee if it was 88% the other way, they would have said it was absolutely perfect.
The pitchforks would have been out, but it didn't suit the narrative, you see. So then that's politics for you.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, and another thing, and I have nothing against people coming in from outside because I think we need diversity, but to be flooding the country, and the Republic of Ireland's got an even bigger problem than we have, to be flooding the country with refugees or asylum seekers when there's already a housing shortage, and they have a housing shortage down there too. It doesn't relieve the pressure on the housing market. It's making it worse. But the funny thing is, those same people that are protesting against us, the landlords, are also protesting against the anti asylum seeker rallies. That they're going and protesting against these people that are not wanting asylum seekers to come in, but actually they're causing they're part of the problem.
Exactly.
But
I can't remember who done the interview or whenever they were at one of these protest rallies, and they were saying, "Oh, I think it was Ukrainians," and they were all saying, would you take one? Would you? Oh no, I've only, I can't. Or we're saying, we're looking for people to volunteer.
Yeah, I live in a 1-bedroom apartment. Oh, sorry, I rent my house. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to sublet. Yeah,
they were all protesting, but not in my back garden.
Yeah, no, definitely not. And that's the problem, that most of the people that are making these decisions won't see them from where they live. They're not going to be living in a house next door. One of the worst things there was the Club NI, or the JD Sports Academy at Jordanstown. The IFA were running a sort of 2-year program for kids 16 to 18, and in the old student accommodation in Jordanstown, in the other block. So they had maybe 2 or 3 of these for IFA with the 16 to 18-year-olds. And then beside that, they had places full of asylum seekers. And the parents were saying that they're going in and all they could smell was weed, and guys standing there, smoking joints and, up to all sorts. And not a good look for, the impressionable 16 to 18-year-olds when you have loads and loads of accommodation blocks full of asylum seekers taking drugs and stuff like that. But there we go. It's hardly going to fight our corner for us as a landlord. But Raymond, in terms of property, what do you think the biggest challenge facing landlords is moving forward?
Tax. That's the big thing. If you can't, as you say, that they're taxing us on non-profit.
Yeah.
So good. I'm paying far more tax now than I ever have, and I haven't changed financially because they've took away the interest payments.
Yeah.
You have a mortgage at 300 quid and you're renting a house for 500. As you know, then the 300 quid is a cost, but it's
Yeah.
just you're paying tax on the 500. Show me another business on the planet that does that.
Yeah.
I don't know. What other business has to pay tax on income and not on profit?
Yeah, that they're not allowed to use at least the interest only part of a business loan, because effectively that's what a mortgage is. But they're
Of course.
trying to say that a buy-to-let mortgage isn't a business loan, but it is, because you're buying your stock, and your stock is property, and you need a loan to buy it.
Yeah.
It's madness. And just as a and I'll tell you why I'm asking you this question in a second. How much do you reckon you've spent over the years on property investing, things, like paying tradesmen and building materials and stuff? Would you ever
Yeah.
guess?
Hundreds of thousands, Chris.
Well, probably millions, would it not be? Even,
Well, sorry, it would be millions if you include the price of the houses, but I mean, yeah,
yeah.
definitely.
I mean, because I often thought that these people that would be protesting, saying that we're this and we're that, and you mentioned the groups there. The amount of money that landlords pump into the local economy has to be hundreds and hundreds of millions of pounds every year. And if we weren't doing it, where would that money, like, would somebody else, would somebody else?
But,
I mean, if I was to stop doing property, and all the people that I know stop doing property, I know a couple of dozen people that would be out of work, tradesmen, because
yeah,
there wouldn't be enough work to go around. So we're actually
no,
keeping people in business, paying taxes, pumping money into the economy, but people think we should stop doing it. I just find that amazing.
that's like your friends who protested the other week, which I missed.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure you'd
I
have
was
some.
quite, I was quite raging when I missed that.
Yeah, well, because they never turned up the next time,
Oh no.
which
Oh,
maybe
we'd
because
like to have a good discussion with them to see what their thought
yeah,
process was.
unbelievable. What's your favorite pastime? What does Raymond Crooks do to chill out? I probably know the answer, but
Uh, Drink red wine. Well, the rugby probably at the moment, Chris. Rugby and golf.
rugby and
Oh,
golf, yeah. And as we speak, this is recorded on Monday the 14th, and our very own Rory McIlroy won the Masters last night. And
yeah,
you told me before we started there that you watched it. You had a few glasses of wine. I'm sure you must have been celebrating.
yeah, it was fantastic. It was
Yeah.
great to see.
I just,
Yeah,
you know, I know even some people here, they go, "Ah, no, I don't like Rory. He's got an attitude." I think his attitude's great. I mean, for somebody like him, the way, and I remember watching them when he blew up in the Masters about 13 years ago or whatever it was. He was six clear,
2011.
2011, six clear on the
Mhm.
last day, and did he lose? He lost by 6 shots or something.
He ended up being 15th.
Yeah, after being six ahead, and,
Yeah,
and as I say, I didn't see it last night. But for him to be 2 shots clear, and I think maybe was he 4 shots clear at a time last night, and he
yeah,
hit the 4 shots back and ended up needing a putt to win it on a playoff hole. I just thought for a wee guy from Northern Ireland, and it's funny because a clip come up on my phone earlier of him knocking golf balls into a washing machine on the Jerry Kelly show when he
yeah.
was a
He
wee
was young, of course.
curly haired and the teeth and all, and he was telling the story about how he practiced golf in his mum's house and knocked golf balls from the hallway in through the kitchen into the washing machine. I just find it amazing that somebody like him that did what he did and then fell away in terms of majors, but still was committed. It's not about the money because the man's got more money than he can ever
No,
dream of
exactly.
spending. It's just about and I think in terms of people, he would inspire me for his commitment to going back time and time again and trying to
Yeah,
get that Masters title.
taking the pain, suffering.
Yeah, and you know what? I think people even in the property world, I think people should be inspired by that about not giving up. Staying focused, um,
Yeah.
and just keep work. Because I mean, Rory McIlroy obviously works hard in his game. He's
Well,
but anyway.
hardness, fitness, and everything else. I'm sure he gave 4.5 million away to a local hospice there recently.
Well, that's what he won the Players' Championship, didn't he?
One of the players, $4.5 million, and he donated the whole thing to I think was it a hospice, or was it Men Camp or something, or it was anyway. Well, anyway, he gave it all to the local charity.
One of the charities involved in here in Northern Ireland, is it not some house for kids with learning disabilities down the Mourns somewhere? One of those charities. Yeah.
Well, he gave them the heap, like, fair play to him.
4.5 mil, yeah, unbelievable. And obviously by him doing that, he wouldn't have to pay tax on it. So they're getting 4.5 million. Brilliant.
Yeah,
no,
I know.
Fantastic. Raymond, listen, thank you very much for taking time out. You're obviously a busy man. Appreciate that.
Yes.
Some good stories. And so listen, Raymond Crooks from Thompson Crooks Solicitor. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Cheers.
Raymond.